Well, so in business today, we are bringing you something on power. And as I speak to you, there is a power forum currently ongoing at the African Regent. We are joining that particular feed live now on the grounds.
Well, what do you expect? We looked at, I was telling Mr. Awotri, we looked at the account, Fat Africa, looked at VRA financials, because that is what we do. We try and analyze the financials and find out the effectiveness of the financial management. And a lot of lumped, amounts were such that we had to break them down. And there were costs that, as Adam said, will not be accepted. There were costs in there caused by inefficiencies. And things that in the private sector, you'll be thrown out or disgraced. But they were there. And we asked, what is this? And they'll tell you, well, that was, the ministry placed the order, the ministry did this, and you have this song, and this goes on and on. So really, we don't have effective governance. Financial management is weak completely, and it's made those people there, the managers, ineffective.
And they're not accountable, essentially, then?
No, the word accountability is used as part of the Ghanaian language because we don't understand it, neither do we practice accountability. If you want accountability, we should have had our giftments. The accounting system itself has collapsed. We don't have an effective one. We've been at the financial system for the government for donkey years, from the 1990s up to today. It's not finished.
Okay. Harriet, there's this issue of ownership. I mean, I know you've done quite a bit of work with the World Bank and so on, so I'd like your view on that. I mean, part of the challenge, obviously, is that if we are to go back to what you said, is that because we don't quite own the plan, we tend not to sort of...
So that's actually a live feed from the African Regent Hotel, and it has to do with that ongoing power forum over there. Our correspondent Kuku Aban is live on the ground and joins us with what is currently going on, just so he brings some clarity to what you just heard. Kuku, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, we just caught bits and pieces of Dr. Adam Winfo speaking there. Tell us much more about what has been going there this morning.
Well, Chenchehene, Mr. Joe Winfo has been speaking in respect of why the tariffs keep increasing, and he's been raising some serious concerns about the public sector. And he thinks there are some of the costs that is passed on to the consumer which shouldn't be. And he thinks it's because of the incompetence of the regulators and the power generators as well. Earlier, Mr. Kuku Awotri was on the floor. He's actually the chairman of the foundation which is being launched today. And he also didn't mince words at all, saying that some African countries have been doing well. He mentioned Kenya, he mentioned Uganda, which have, if you like, sold off their power sector, if you like, our ECG, and they are making a lot of profits right now. And these companies are quite viable at the moment, whilst in our case, we can't even manage our power. But he commended the country, if you like, ECG as well, for extending power to remote areas. So in his words, when you look at Africa, Ghana has extended power more than a lot of the countries to, the remote areas. But the dilemma is that you extend so much power to the other people, then you are not if you are not generating enough to meet the demand, then you find yourself in this particular crisis. That's where he thinks the challenge is. So in his view, Ghana should strike the balance in extending these to the remote areas, right, and also making sure that it's cost effective. Okay. So that's where he says Ghana should try and do so much in. So there's also this issue about the tariffs, which he thinks it should be looked at. He says the PURC has been incompetent. They are not doing their work well, and they should, man up and work well. And Mr. Mohamed Amin Adam has been speaking, and he blames the tariff increases or the calls for tariff increases on the poor generating plants. He says because they are not able to generate the power or manage the equipment well, that's why they always want to pass on their inefficiencies onto the consumer. So the celebration is still underway, and a lot more is going to come up.
Right. Many thanks for that update. And that was my colleague Kuko Aban joining us live from the African Regent Hotel, where there's a power forum currently ongoing. We'll bring you much more on that particular forum in subsequent bulletins, particularly on the business segment. But away from that to some other stories. Now, who is to blame for the spiraling debts the country is entangled in? Now, is it the executive or the legislature? Now, looking beyond the politics of it all, who must set up and work to ensure that we do not worsen our credit crisis? Dr. Godfred Bokpin is head of finance at the University of Ghana Business School and joins us with an analytical perspective. Dr. Bokpin, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. So,
yes, good morning, and then good morning to your cherished viewers.
Thank you very much, sir. Who should we ultimately blame for this whole thing, this excessive borrowing?
Whatever debt that has been contracted was done for Ghana and in the name of Ghana. So at the end of the day, it's Ghana's debt. The public debt is a reflection of all accumulated debt since Ghana was founded. Whether it's this regime or a different regime, ultimately it's you and I. Ultimately, it comes down to Ghanaians. So the blame game is not the solution to debt sustainability. Blame game has no place in terms of our debt management strategy. What is important is the strategies that we are putting in place to ensure that whatever debt that we have accumulated have been invested for productive purposes. But there is also history to it because, you see, in 2001, our debt to GDP ratio was in excess of 100%, somewhere around 113%. So we went through the HIPRIC process. We talked about the HIPRIC relief, which ended in 2004, and the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative, which also ended in 2006. So if you look at from that time, and after the rebasing, our debt to GDP ratio was less than 40%. We are talking about somewhere early 2009. From lower than around 36% to today, we are talking about something in excess of 70%. I think we have built that quite rapidly. But my challenge is not the fact that the debt has stalled. The issue is what do we have to show for it? So perhaps the blame game could come from explanations from our leaders that I took $2 billion. This was how I invested them.
So is that not what we are seeing now? Are we not seeing what these monies are being used for? I mean, the president has mentioned a number of things.
Certainly no. Then I think the president will have to do a little bit more and tell us how they have used the money. Because you see, the economy has a way of providing a positive feedback of how well you have managed the economy. There's nothing other than what we are saying. Okay, so if you put those debt to good use, the economy will provide a feedback. Growth will pick up. We should be growing in excess of 7%, not 4.1%. Because the challenge is that if the addition to the debt to GDP ratio in terms of borrowing, in terms of in debt servicing, is not fully offset by real economic growth, then the country is exposed. The problem in this country is that we contract these loans all right, but we are unable to get, full value for money. A project that should cost, let's say, 30, will end up spending about 90 for it. Okay. Then at the end, they realize that the economy has been shortchanged to some extent, even though you would have gone for the debt. So when we also talk about debt sustainability, there are a number of indicators. We can talk about the present value of export revenue to debt ratio. We can talk about debt to GDP ratio. We may not be doing badly in terms of the policy dependency threshold established by the IMF and the World Bank. But one key area that we should be concerned is, as a country, the amount of money that we are using to service our debt to tell us that we have borrowed perhaps beyond a certain point. And perhaps the way we have invested those monies, maybe it would be for us to get the fruit, or the economy is not generating sufficient cash flow to be able to contain the debt. This is where our problem is. Let's go back to the 2016 budget. As a country, we are able to raise revenue on our own, 28.9 billion cedis. Out of this amount, 10.5 billion cedis goes to just debt servicing. We are spending more than 1/3 of every cedi revenue we are able to generate in this country just to service our debt. And I am sorry for Ghana. This is not good news. Because this has the potential of crowding out priority spending. It means that this 10-point-something billion could have been used maybe in building hospitals, in completing certain roads on our own or whatever. But you see, I'm not blaming anybody. This is the level of rigidity that the system imposes on us. And these were created by our own actions and inactions over the years. That is now taking a toll.
So looking into the future, does the future look that bleak?
I think that we have control. As a country, we have to determine what we want for ourselves. And then
but should we go on this same tangent? Should we go on this particular tangent?
There's no future if we speed up along this way. There's no point in speeding up when you are heading for the wrong direction.
Right.
So I think that we can't keep on. We cannot borrow our way through our problems. But I do admit that because we are unable to generate sufficient cash flow, there will be the need for us to borrow to complement our developmental efforts.
Right.
But the question is that when we borrow, we must invest them for productive purposes.
Exactly.
And we
Self-financing
must ensure
projects.
value for money.
Indeed.
And this we should be able to do regardless of which party is in power.
Indeed.
Because at the end, the parties come and go. It's Ghana's debt.
Right.
This debt is Ghana's debt, ultimately.
Many thanks for your time on News Desk this morning. That was Dr. Godfred Alufo-Bokpin. He's Head of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School. And that's it for Business Time. Now check out the very latest.